The data we are about to show you are not opinions, but documented facts. The Catholic Church is losing faithful at an unprecedented rate. An international study confirms that this decline isn't a fluke, but has a specific cause. Stay with us until the end, because together we'll discover not only where this crisis stems from, but also why it may have been triggered from within the Church itself. The numbers are merciless, and this time they don't come from polemical blogs, but from the pages of the Catholic News Agency, which reports solid academic studies. In less than half a century, the Catholic Church has lost 9 out of 10 faithful raised in the faith. This isn't hyperbole, it's a cold, verified fact, and it speaks of a silent collapse that is emptying parishes, stifling vocations, and dissolving communities. In the United States, Europe, and Latin America, the scene is the same. Deserted altars, empty confessionals, bells ringing in churches, transformed into restaurants or cultural centers. Yet, the diagnosis isn't limited to noting the flight of the faithful. Other research agrees on a disturbing point. The decline isn't the inevitable result of modernity, but rather a specific, datable internal rupture. But we'll get to that later. In the United States, an analysis published by the Church Life Journal of Notre Dame and reported by the Catholic News Agency shows a clear trend. Cradle Catholics leave and almost never return. The study, based on 50 years of general social survey data, reveals a slow but steady erosion of both Catholic identity and Sunday observance. 3 causes have been identified: the loss of community bonds among believers, a growing gap between Catholic morality and mainstream morality, especially regarding sexuality, marriage, and life, and the impact of the internet and smartphones, which have replaced natural socialization in religious circles with constant immersion in secular culture. For the authors, the only possible answer is to rebuild the Catholic fabric from the bottom up. Families who live their faith together, vibrant parishes, strong movements, adult mentors, and activities that make Christian life something daily and shared. A return, in short, to that cohesive environment in which faith was once transmitted almost naturally. But there is another study, reported by many international newspapers and impossible to dismiss as biased opinion, which confirms and amplifies the alarm raised by the American data. È il rapporto del National Bureau of Economic Research, dal titolo Looking Backward: Long-Term Religious Service Attendance in 66 Countries. A monumental work based on almost 100 years of statistics collected on every continent, which reaches a conclusion as clear as it is uncomfortable. The decline of Catholic practice was neither gradual nor inevitable, but had a specific beginning, and it coincided with the Second Vatican Council. The authors, economists by training, with no affiliation or internal agenda within the Church, documented that in traditionally Catholic countries, Mass attendance has declined much more rapidly than in other Christian denominations, such as Orthodox and Protestants, which have maintained more stable levels of practice. And above all, the decline began after the Council. Previous data show no comparable downward trend. This means that the narrative of inevitable global secularization doesn't hold up. The rift wasn't imposed from the outside, but arose from within, following specific choices in managing the post-conciliar period. The consequences were devastating. Within a few decades, the collapse of liturgical participation dragged down priestly and religious vocations, especially female ones. Fewer nuns mean fewer Catholic schools. Fewer schools, less transmission of the faith to new generations. Less Christian education. Fewer families open to life. It's a domino effect that has even affected the birth rate in Catholic countries. Entire dioceses, particularly in North America and Europe, have been emptied. Parishes closed, seminaries deserted, convents sold or transformed into hotels, restaurants, and wellness centers. What was once a capillary network of vibrant, socially integrated communities has been reduced in many regions to an archipelago of empty structures, incapable of truly impacting people's lives. And this is precisely where the question of synodality comes into play. Today presented as a watchword and universal recipe for church renewal. To hear it spoken of, one might say it's a return to an ancient tradition of episcopal consultation, rooted throughout the centuries. But the reality is different. What is being proposed is no longer a simple consultative tool reserved for bishops, but rather a profound transformation of ecclesial governance where everyone, bishops, priests, religious, lay people, even students, participates in theory in doctrinal and pastoral decisions. Sister Natalie Beckart, Under-Secretary of the Synod, bluntly called it the Second Vatican Council in a nutshell. And for many, this is precisely the problem. If that shell has led to half a century of decline, extending its contents can only deepen the crisis. Modern synodality, in fact, seems to follow the same trajectory as the post-conciliar period. Deliberately vague language, a spasmodic focus on walking together and listening, rather than on the proclamation of the truth. The temptation to reduce apostolic authority to an assembly's consensus. Critical voices are not lacking, and they are not marginal. Cardinal Joseph Zen has warned that boundless synodality risks changing everything: the doctrine of the faith and moral discipline. Cardinal George Pell, in one of his last speeches, called the entire process toxic and a threat to the Catholic faith, denouncing the systematic use of ambiguity to introduce doctrinal changes without openly declaring them. Other canonists speak openly of a strategy of vagueness, a method that opens gaps in tradition without taking the responsibility of breaking with it in the open. In this context, synodality appears not as a cure, but as the symptom of a deeper evil, the loss of a stable and recognizable center, capable of guiding the people of God with the same clarity as yesterday. But there still exist communities where the Catholic faith is not a relic of the past, but a living, shared reality. These are parishes and groups tied to the traditional liturgy, where the Latin Mass is the beating heart of community life. Here, families, priests, and young people live together with solid catechisms, frequent sacraments, and vocations that flourish almost naturally. There's no talk of new paths, but rather what the Church has always done is preserved, worshipping God, transmitting the faith, and practicing fraternal charity. Pope Leo XIV can no longer afford to remain silent. He has inherited a disoriented church where truth risks being confused with opinion and tradition with an optional extra for nostalgics. It is time to act clearly, defending without hesitation the true Catholic identity, one rooted in the faith of all time, in the liturgy that honors the sacrifice and does not entertain, in the doctrine that does not change with the pace of fashion. Every day of waiting deepens the confusion. Every ambiguous word fuels the flight of the faithful. If the Pope truly wants to be a pastor, he must now speak as a father and guardian of a church now in decline. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.